You're listening to Dead Air Podcast, part of splatterpictures.net.
What's up, everybody? Wes, Dead Air Night here with Always.
Typical Lydia.
Today's show, we're going to be doing the 1989 classic Shocker.
Oh, that's a good one. You practiced that, I can tell.
You know, I did, and now I feel silly that I did, but I did, and I was really looking forward to it because this has a clear-cut little bit of Foley work that I can do because electricity features prominently in this film, as well as everything, including the kitchen sink.
And it's not a wolf howl. So for once, you're not compelled, or it doesn't necessitate a wolf howl, which is nice. Much like our previous, our previous one did have a howl, did it not?
Our previous one did have a howl. You know, I'm gonna put this on here. I want everyone to mark this episode. If we ever do something where there is a werewolf, I refuse to do a wolf howl ever again. And if I do fall back on a wolf howl for any other sound effect to introduce the show, well, I don't know what, but I won't do it. That's my solemn pledge to you, dear listeners, and to you, Lydia.
Well, we'll see how that goes, because there are some interesting wolf movies coming up, newer wolf movies. And I know we don't cover new movies all of the time, and this is a shining example of it with Shocker and House 3 that we just recently covered, and some of the other films that we've been talking about lately. But there are a lot of werewolves. Someone in Hollywood's really trying to get werewolves to be the thing.
Well, it's a great concept. I've always loved a good, well-done werewolf movie. There's just a lot to mine from that, and in terms of, like, if we're going to be excited, maybe some people aren't, but if we're going to be excited about 10,000 Dracula movies, Nosferatu in theaters in December, then I think we got room for the Wolfman too.
And it's better than, if you're trying to make a concept work and a concept go large, it's better than electrocuted criminals, because, that's a stretch. They were really trying hard. Yeah, I think werewolves, they're trying hard with werewolves. People have tried zombies. That worked. That went large for way too long, to the point that people were like, oh, God, no, give me the crab juice, not another zombie movie. But now, what the fuck is this? Ted Bundy is set to fry, so filmmakers go, I know what I want to do. Electrocuted criminals coming back to haunt us, Wes. Like, isn't that just the nightmare fuel you've been waiting for?
There's something to be said about the golden era of serial killers, something that really captured the imaginations of the population. Serial killers meant big news. It was a new concept back in the late 60s, early 70s, and it seemed as though once we had a way to define these types of murderers, all of a sudden we saw them around every corner, and the most prolific and most famous serial killers were all found to be operating in and around the same 10 to 15 year period. It was really, really interesting time. And then in the late 1980s, it takes a while, gang, to not only catch these killers, but to give them their due process. And then when you get on death row, unlike this movie would have you believe, you don't just immediately go to the electric chair. So by the time the late 80s had happened, more than our fair share of prominent serial killers had been brought to justice or executed or in the process of being executed. So I think you might be onto something with why this seemed to capture so many people's imaginations. A great example in the early 1970s to the mid 1970s, how many Manson-esque hippies in the desert movies were there? Tons and tons of them. I Drink Your Blood, Snuff, I could go on. And that was a huge event that captured the world's imagination and let everybody know that perhaps hippies, drug-fueled hippies, Lydia, could be the people murdering you, particularly if you were a wealthy person from the suburbs or perhaps even a Hollywood elite. So I think this makes absolute sense. However, I think one thing that they kept consistently learning up to a point, there is just no financial benefit for making movies like this. And even the great Wes Craven's name across the top could not help Shocker hit the level that people who make movies wanted to hit.
Now, I think that there's more going on in the story of failure when it comes to Shocker, other than, just maybe it hitting at the wrong time. Maybe it just was unpalatable. Maybe it was up against House 3. Maybe it was a little too Looney Tunes, perhaps, for our horror palettes at the time. Maybe we were looking for something a little more serious to match the tone of the world at the time. Maybe we were looking to move away from what seemed to be these overblown Hollywood style horror films with too many effects. We wanted something a little more down home. And that would make a lot of sense heading into the 90s teen horror cycle. We wanted something a little more relatable. And maybe that's part of it. Because frankly, there's not one character in this that was memorable to me. I'd watched it when it came out, and I vaguely remember the first half of the movie. And I think I just deleted from memory all of the gooniness because, and that fully explains to me why it might have not gone as large. And I think that a lot of our nostalgia with this film is because of the cover art. The cover art was the movie. Everyone remembers that exact VHS tape cover from the Blockbuster days.
It's absolutely correct. The image of our dear Horace strapped to the electric chair in his unique orange prison jumpsuit with the white checkers, all the electricity around him, sitting in that chair, the title treatment of Shocker writ large across the top. It was ubiquitous in video stores in the late 1980s into the early 1990s. It seemed that if you went into a video store, they had the poster, they had the cardboard standee, they definitely had the VHS. And I'm not exactly sure if this was a heavy renter. I really wish that I could ask somebody who worked in a video store. My cousin Tyler, he worked in a video store, but that would have been a few years after this. But there's something about talking about your experience in the video store that I think is fun for dinosaurs like us to talk about and annoying for young people to listen to, because it seems like every time I turn around on social media, I got some old motherfucker that looks exactly like me saying, "You guys don't know what it was like. It was late Friday, wandering the aisles of the video store, trying to find something to rent." Like, you're romanticizing a failed weekend. Like, we're romanticizing, like, I know that when I was in that position and I was at the video store on Friday night, like just before it closed, it means that I didn't have the foresight to make any plans. And the worst thing was sometimes you would go there and you would look around and you wouldn't even fucking rent anything. So, all right, great. We went for a walk. That's kind of nice. The video store I've talked about was Video Biz. That was the one that was near my house growing up. And this guy named Mike was always the dude behind the counter, and that's where, when I think of Shocker, I think of that video store, and I think of the standee, and I think of seeing it all the time in the horror section. But it also can skew your perception. I don't know how you feel about this, but do you feel like, because when you're alive and aware and seeing these things, now all these years later, when these movies get quote unquote rediscovered, do you find it, like, pardon the pun, shocking that people don't know what these fucking movies are? Like, a recent example is, it seems like for a hot minute there this year, everyone was talking about Mute Witness. Like, it was like this obscure Mute Witness. Guys, have you, like, there's this really obscure, crazy movie like that nobody remembers. It's like it, and I was like, just like Shocker, I fucking saw the poster to Mute Witness all the time, and I saw that fucking VHS tape in the video store all the time. So for anyone to be like, Mute Witness, anyway, Shocker is kind of the same. Do you feel that? Do you feel like that way a little bit? Like how you remember how prominent things are just because you were actually there?
I believe so, because I would see things like House begin streaming, and I'm sure other people have watched House that aren't of the age that they would have been hanging out in a Blockbuster Friday night at 10 p.m. That particular, the poster for that was in our local Video Fever, and it was at Lakeshore Video too. They had the poster up for House because it's so iconic. That cover, even though I'd seen the movie, my eyes would be drawn to the cover every single time, just like, oh, there's House, because I just love it. It just looks so cool. And they use the exact same poster art. That's one of the few movies that you see on the streaming places that doesn't use like alternate poster art. They use that disembodied rotten zombie hand ringing the doorbell. That's what they use. So I'm pretty sure that there's people that had never discovered it, that have watched it and have been mind blown by this crazy movie that deals with PTSD of all things. Like, just a very wild horror comedy romp with serious undertones. And they're probably just flabbergasted that they haven't heard about it, because I never heard people talk about House from that era until lately. And it's mostly us that talk about House, to be fair. But it's all over the streamers. It's on every single one, it seems. And prominently, too. So, I don't know. I really cringe when I hear people be like, oh, back in my day, you don't know what it was like. Remember, kids, on VHS, you had to put a tape in a machine. Like, fucking annoying. But on the other hand, I absolutely love what Stuart Bannerman was doing with Page to Screen podcast, where he did a clutch of solo episodes talking about being that guy. That is someone we could ask. Did Shocker move off the shelves as much as we would like to think it did, because of the iconic cover, the posters everywhere, and the Wes Craven name at the time? Because people were holding out for the next big thing, the next big Shocker from Wes Craven, and this must have tasted like salt cod.
Oof. Wow. What is this movie even about anyways, Lydia? I want to know. Is it about cod?
No, it's really not. I just had to think of something disgusting. But this movie is about, I don't know, man. You know what? I don't really even know. This movie is about bastardizing the American dream, because we start out with taking something that looks like that reel they play at midnight when the TV stations used to go off the air, but it's a bastardized version of just the violence surrounding the U.S. and in the hearts of American citizens at the time, and how I would like to say traumatized they were by things like assassinations, World War, and things like the atomic bomb, and living in the atomic age, the Cold War, the end of the Cold War, or the cold, quiet end of the Cold War we didn't trust was really ending at the time. Those sorts of things were traumatizing the U.S. I mean, certainly they've lived through 10 times bigger tragedy that touched them quite physically many years later. But at the time, this was a scary, traumatic age. And we were like looking at the common era at the time through the lens of all of that trauma. And it was embodying itself, like jumping through the airwaves. It's violence coming at you from the very air itself, much like televised broadcasts of all of this insanity. So I know that it's sort of like a higher level thing than this is about an evil dude and how he's going to get you, you know. But I think that's really what it was the very airwaves carry tragedy, trauma, destruction, and death.
It's a way to get into your home, into your comfortable, safe living room. And unfortunately, screaming that you're mad as hell and aren't going to take it anymore is not going to save you this time.
Man, Network's such a good movie.
It's an iconic film. What are your children watching? Too much television. That was what was the big thing when I was very young. And it turned into video games, and then video games turned into your computer, and then your computer turned into your phone. And we are constantly terrified. Before television, or before it was TV, and then it was also VHS. Like, what are you talking about? You could watch movies after the TV stations have stopped broadcasting. You could just watch forever. And television, oh my God, movies in your home at all? Well, at least they turn off. And then it was the cinema, and then it was books. Like, you're reading too many books. Your head is in the clouds. You got to get out there and, I don't know, work in a factory. I don't know what people did when books were popular, but I mean, they're still popular. What am I talking about?
But when they were rotting the minds and warping the youth.
Exactly. And whatever you want to call it, it seemed like we were always being told that the ways that we spend our time entertaining ourselves are fucking poison. And it was, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing other than trying to entertain myself in between my job and sleeping. But when you were a kid, you in theory had school and then an unending series of screen time or whatever the fuck. And I really just feel like so many films were coming out that was about how cartoonishly evil television is. Those ideas seem so quaint because the only people still watching television, like traditional television with commercials and don't touch that dial, is our grandparents. Like, I haven't had fucking cable in I don't know how long. So like, but I still watch things. I still watch things all the time. But now, like, no one's, like, since I'm like fucking 40, no one talks about what's on your phone too much. You know what I mean? Like, that's something that we reserve for young people. And I just feel like with Wes Craven making this film and so many other films that talk about the evils of television, it just seemed like people don't get it. They're not who they're worried about. And so they're like, but I'm going to make commentary on this because television is definitely evil. Just like all the things that Wes Craven doesn't like because of his upbringing are evil, right? Like, he doesn't like the church because, you know, he grew up like super religious, and so he like balks against authority, and he became like a professor, and he's a hipster and like a pseudo intellectual and stuff like that. Do you get the sense, Lids? Do you get the sense that he made A Nightmare on Elm Street, and then Freddy Krueger becomes the biggest thing in horror at the time ever, and then he made no bones about not liking any of the sequels, like even the ones that he worked on. Like he thinks they're all stupid. And so do you think that he was like half asleep one day and like a fucking executive poked him with a fucking ruler, and they're like, make another Freddy Krueger thing? And so he forced to make a parodic version of his own shit.
I really think so. And I mean, a lot of people on YouTube use this as a strategy, you know, to look at your top 10 performing videos. Now pick one that you want to make 20 more of. And I think that that's exactly what he was trying, was just like, well, I can't just make more Freddy Krueger because I'm disenfranchised with Freddy Krueger. Freddy Krueger has changed. So I got to make Freddy Krueger 2.0. Horace Pinker. I mean, stupidest name. They didn't give a lot of thought to this. And there's a lot of times in the script where it's just like, what? Why did you, like, you don't, your characters don't seem to know what they're doing. So you obviously didn't know what you were doing. This is a first draft and a rough draft at that, it seems, in certain portions of this film. So I think that the idea itself was that first draft half-baked. Like, okay, well, what do people like about Freddy Krueger? He jumps around in your dreams. He's got one-liners and stuff. And he survives some sort of horrific fate. Okay, we'll take those things and just plug in other shit. Oh, what's in the news right now? Same thing he sort of did when he came up with Freddy fucking Krueger, opened up the newspaper and went, yeah, that keeps me up at night for a couple days. No Freddy Krueger pun intended. But he like looked in the news, oh, executions, I guess. That's what we'll do. And it felt that off the cuff.
Wes Craven's a weird guy. He is somebody who has a lot of who has done a lot of good for horror, and you know, and by all accounts, he was a sweet man, and very good to his cast and crew, and very mild mannered and soft spoken. Man, he just thinks he's so smart, and I just wish that the execution of his ideas could be a little bit more eloquent, a little less on the nose. Like, I'm a comic book writer. We don't deal in subtlety. In fact, it's discouraged to write in subtlety when you're writing comic books. It's like, do not make your points obliquely. Like, if you're trying to make a social commentary about something, fucking make a social commentary about something. It's because you have a limited amount of space on those pages to tell your story. So you better do it precisely. But man, and I don't want to rag on Wes Craven because
you promised you wouldn't.
I promised I wouldn't. Because like I said, he seemed like a nice guy. I don't know him, and he's fucking dead. Okay, so I'm not gonna sit here and call this movie a pile of shit. But like, what I am going to say is, okay, let's start at the fucking beginning. Horace Pinker is the most murderiest murderer that you've ever fucking seen in your entire life. He's not as crazy as our previous killer from the horror show.
Fun looking either, in a way. This is what, the director from X-Files, if you recall.
Yeah, he's Skin Man. He's that's what he's like. Don't call me that, Mulder. I used to joke about, he was always a welcome sight when I saw him on the X-Files. I was a huge X-Files kid.
Me too.
So I always forget that he's the killer in this fucking movie. And when the movie starts off, immediately when he's delving into his character and you're getting a sense of who Horace is, you're reminded, oh God, he's such a much better actor. Like, this is going to be so much better and than our previous foray into the super serial killer. But man alive, this is where directing is key. You have choices to help your actor make. Like, was there no one around this guy who was going to be fucking there for him? Was there nobody that when he started ramping things up to 11, was this encouraged? Did he just, was it good enough and we're moving on, close the gate? Or is Wes Craven incapable of seeing a bad take?
I picture him and Brian sitting at the bar going like, oh yeah, we're both playing these super serial killers, super spree killers that are like gonna get electrocuted and come back, and we gotta be extra fucking crazy, super evil. What do you do, man? I'll bug my eyes out. I'm gonna try that. because no one's telling us how to do. So we're just gonna wing it and like ramp it up to 11 and see if they tell us to dial it back. They didn't, so we ramp it up to 12 if it goes that high. So I think that that's really what was going on there, because he is a better actor, and all of them are. You know, like we've got Peter Berg, who has been in so many things since. So many things. The type of guy, again, that you look at and you know what he's been in. You recognize him from stuff, maybe not by name. He was in a movie that we did do, Fire in the Sky.
Yes.
And he's been in 7,000 trillion billion other films other than that. But I was very pleased to find he had written and directed Very Bad Things, a very good movie. So I really, really enjoyed him and his performance, but I know he's better than even this. Right? And like, he's not bad in this necessarily. He's carrying the whole fucking movie, really, honestly, but he could do so much better, and he wasn't given a lot of direction from one of the premier directors of the time? ?
I started to get that sinking feeling when, right off the bat, in typical Wes Craven fashion, we have something quite horrific. Imagine, Lydia, if you will, you are a hard-nosed detective who has been pursuing a notorious phantom slasher who has 30 dead bodies that we know about to his name, entire families wiped out, sleeping alone in their beds, and this mass murderer maniac comes into their home and snuffs out their existence. And what if you got so close that in order to teach you a lesson to not pursue them any further, your own family would be added to that roster? That is harrowing. That is tragic. That is fucking flatline. There is no reaction that is being given that makes it seem that this man whose wife and children were butchered, he spends more time consoling his foster child, Jonathan, about the whole thing. Now, maybe hard nose, I got to be strong for my one remaining child. So I got to help him get through this, but nothing to the point in which when a secondary murder occurs early on in the film, it may as well have not even happened. And I was waiting for Lieutenant Parker to get a line, a monologue, anything to emote in a way that was remotely worthy of this heavy ass note in this script. And nothing through the entire fucking picture. Not a goddamn thing, Lydia.
No, he does not. He acts like he didn't know those people. And even when his foster son comes running up to the house, like, oh my God, Dad, I heard about what happened. He's like, yeah, I told you on the phone, there's nothing you can do here. And it's like, what? Holy shit. Like, at least give him a hug or understand why he came to the house that his foster mother was just killed in moments ago. I mean, I get that he would be nonplussed talking to his foster son about the dreams he's had. The conversation that they have in a diner about, I dreamt all this happened and I know who's killing. His van was parked in front, wasn't it, Dad? And his dad is angered by this because he thinks that he's, I don't know, being a crazy hippie or something. I have no idea. But yeah, other than that bit of anger and tossing the old foster son a hug or two, he doesn't. Yeah, it is very cold. And again, the actor seems to not really know what to do with his face throughout all of this, so it's really hard on him. And then we have a funeral scene where all of his classmates are there, I guess, because we get treated to my favorite, Ted Raimi, credited as Theodore Raimi. Oh, I love that. I want to get
formal.
Yeah, very formal, and there should be like a little gilt frame around it. Theodore Raimi in every scene, everywhere you want to be. He's in almost every fucking scene of this movie. It's if you're as big a Ted Raimi fan as I am, then this is the movie to see. Well, no, not really. He doesn't really do much, or he has like maybe 5 lines through the whole thing, and a beautiful death. But yeah, this funeral. I've understood that Wes Craven was once told, "Don't put funeral scenes in films. It's a downer. Show people walking to a funeral or away from a funeral. Don't show like the funeral. Don't show the coffin. Don't show the mourners. It's just too much of a down note, and people don't go to movies to see that." And from what I understand, that's his favorite thing to do. He started looking forward to funeral scenes in films, especially with kids around. He really liked doing that, apparently. But that's just what I vaguely remember from an interview. It's a really strange funeral scenes. It's really strange lack of emotion throughout the whole thing, except for I'm gonna get that guy. Revenge is maybe an emotion.
There's a part of me that wonders if it is a bit of his own repression coming through, where you have two emotions as a man: nothing and anger. That's it. Is that where he so stunted that when actors are giving him nothing, he says, well, of course they feel bad about it, but I mean, they are a man after all. Is that where it's coming from? And then when the tragedy is so overwhelming, it's rage. You must demonstrate rage. Don't cry. What are you, a fucking pussy? Don't cry. You're mad. And that's it. Now, weirdly, Jonathan seems more angry than his father, when it really should be equal. But at the same time, Jonathan wants to go because of some stretch of the imagination with dreams. And man, if I had somehow managed to capture lightning in a bottle in 1984, let's pretend I wasn't a baby, and create something where the most prominent thing about it is dreaming and dream sequences and altered reality because of dreams, I would, in every fiber of my being, be struggling tooth and nail to make sure that I never did another dream sequence outside of that franchise again, because it really makes you look like a fucking one-trick pony. Like there's no other way to say it. It's like, so what are we doing, Wes? Dreams? Like, you're doing dreams again, man? You already did the dream. You don't need to do that anymore. Like, we were making fun of House 3 for just doing dream sequences that weren't dream sequences and calling this like a Freddy Krueger ripoff. Bro, you don't need to fucking rip off your own character. Like, yeah. I don't understand why we're doing dreams. And so I'm going to come to the crime scene with you like it's a fucking sightseeing trip. And then these cops are so bumbling that they all get fucking slaughtered by I'm sorry, a guy who can barely walk. What the fuck is going on here?
I did like this scene in that the ingeniousness that is maybe only seconded in the film Fallen, where the person can jump bodies, and Fallen treats it completely differently, of course, and it made me want to watch Fallen quite a bit. But yeah, I did like this scene in that sense. But the only other thing that these people have as far as an emotion is one-liners. And if you think it's bad that he's ripped off dream sequences and dream jumping and dreams being like the catalyst for which this killer interacts with people, or that the hero interacts with the killer, watch out, because we got some fucking one-liners coming, and they're just going to ramp up and up and up and up to the stratosphere, because that's the other way to express an emotion, I feel. And I think that you're really onto something with the fact that these people, specifically men, are quite stunted. And the women are very trad wife in all of his, even the ones that are taking a drunk man home from time to time. They're all very trad wife on their surface, or the goal is to be the trad wife. And we've got that in the girlfriend here for sure. But I think that that is the only other acceptable expression of any feeling, opinion, or emotion is one-liners, joking around, being the class clown.
The more that we talk about it, the more I just seem really dialed into this notion that the script and the way that characters react to the story is such a humongous breadth of distance. You have like, and it's almost like the story versus the character, the scenario versus the characters. They just don't line up. And I respect how dark this script could actually be, because it's incredibly dark. Because we have Lieutenant Parker, who just lost a whole bunch of officers after he just lost his wife and his children. And then we're going to have another massive tragedy because Allison, who has really been the feminine emotional center to these two stubborn, curled lip, snarling men who either have no emotion or too much rage in the midst of tragedy, they're going to lay it on as thick as possible on Allison's fucking birthday, immediately after giving her birthday present. And then she has a scene by herself where she asks God to protect Jonathan. Pinker just shows up and kills her. And not only kills her, paints the walls red with her blood. There is more blood on these walls and in this bathtub than is in the human body.
Easily. It is a very, very brutal set piece death. And, you know, I kind of, as much as it's nice to have her as balance, I'd be very happy if we never saw her again through the film.
Well, too
Unfortunately,
bad.
we do.
Yeah, too bad, because you're going to get her, like, man, you got to establish some fucking rules. You've got to tell me what is and is not possible in this world. And people are so chill with all of these buck wild fucking things that happen in this movie.
If we stay with the seriousness up until a certain point, this movie does stay within the realm of quasi-believability and maybe a little bit of like a supernatural, Uri Geller level supernatural and psychokinetic, or I don't even know, telemetric. I don't know what it is that Pinker does because it is sort of like a black magic thing that they got going on. But you know what? He gets arrested. He gets caught. He gets arrested. He slaughters 4 or 5 other families in his spree.
That's
like a crazy spree, which, you know, the girl dying is just sort of like the apex of it all. He's been killing families up until killing a cop's family. It goes on a massive spree, kills a bunch of cops, kills this beautiful girl, slaughters a bunch of families. There was a spree killer in Canadian history, I guess it was in the 60s, that went on a spree something like this, of just shooting people in the streets, going into homes, shooting everyone in the house, going to the next house. It was very intense like that. And he had said that it's no different than squashing a bug. Very, very dark, deranged individual. And this is what we're getting from Horace Pinker. That sort of like very cold, deranged murder spree that like would end all murder sprees. I can't even think of anything quite like it in real reality.
His body count is insane for even some of the most notorious real life serial killers. You're already in the upper echelon of an insane body count, particularly considering that this is all happening within a short period of time. This frenzy, there will be no attempts to discern why Horace is doing any of this. A compunction more than anything. They're not even going to attempt it. Wes Craven's film deals constantly in this heightened sense of reality. Everything is just at a level in which it becomes, pardon the expression, dreamlike, in the sense that wouldn't it be cool if everyone was kind of impossibly attractive? Wouldn't it be cool if we all knew how to fight? That fight between Jonathan, who's supposed to just be a football star, a straight A student football star like you do, but versus a hardened killer. And when I saw them fighting on that rooftop, you have Jonathan jumping in between buildings. This is someone who less than a day ago was just a kid playing football. Now he's in the fucking Matrix. Like, when you see Horace and Jonathan fighting, that fight on the rooftop, they are using the environment. They're both so athletic and young and lithe, and they look like they know what they're doing. Like, and I every single time that these two men fight each other, it's like fighting. It does not tire you out. Getting punched 50 times in the head does not dizzy you, stagger you, slow you down whatsoever. You are sharp, athletic, crisp, and you are using the environment to fight as if you've been to that place 100 times, and you have all the best implements picked out for just such an occasion. And this keeps ramping up. But even this, there's so many moments in this movie that is the climax of another fucking movie. Like,
yeah.
Like, and it starts really with this rooftop battle. It feels like we're in the third act. And I'll tell you, every time it seems like we're in the third act again, because it happens multiple times. But long story short, Horace does finally get captured. They do make allusions to, like, he's into voodoo or black magic or what, or Satanism or whatever. He's got some cat strung up. A positive thing I'll say about the movie is it looks good. Like, I like Horace's lair. I like all the TVs. I like the traps and the dust and all of that kind of stuff. It looks good. Lids, could you describe the moment that these cops show up with the priest to take Horace away? Could you give the audience a little bit of a sense of what this scene looks like?
One of the only things missing here is all of his dead black cats, because that would have helped amp up the atmosphere. They had said that he asked for a television as one of his last requests before getting the electric chair. So he's sitting there in front of his television with black candles all around. So not only did he ask for a television, he has black candles and fire, like things I don't think you can have in a jail cell, and jumper cables, giant jumper cables, and he's hanging on to them, and there is just static electricity and a beam between him and the television, like they're communing through the airwaves, and he's basically asking the power of Dumbledore, it seems to me, very Chucky, and having this like quasi black magic with Santorian and Satanist kind of overtones sprinkled over, with the television and electricity. I don't know exactly what it is that he's doing though, but the cops go to stop him, and of course the bars of his jail cell are electrified, so it throws people back, and they eventually do get him, but not before an entity comes reaching out of the television as some sort of lips, like Rolling Stone-esque lips.
Yeah.
And what does it say to him? Like, it's ready to rock?
It's like, sure thing, baby.
Sure thing, baby. Sure thing, like very, like Elvis-ish.
Yeah.
Is it the ghost of Elvis that he's playing to?
Is it the concept of television? Is it like, is this where we're at?
This is big entertainment?
Particularly when you find out where this movie goes, it would have to be, because this whole notion that you could become godlike by it completely stops being about a guy who's made of electricity, and it becomes about a guy who can manipulate television like that. Like,
yeah.
And it's a long way to go where you need to pick a fucking lane about what you want your film to be discussing. If you had done this movie and you had kept it as more of an accident, more of an ambiguous thing, a freak of nature, that it just so happened that this man was so full of hate and malice that he was able to come back from the dead. Again, it's a classic EC Comics Tales from the Crypt type thing, where just someone awful comes back from the dead. It's your worst nightmare. What you thought was over is not over. But they couldn't leave well enough alone. They tried to explain it in a way that makes absolutely no sense. Absolutely none. And there's no context to anything. And it just always just seems like an impression. Oh, I read somewhere what Satanism and black magic was. I heard about it, and it's like someone who heard about black magic and wants to make a comment about media and our television consumption, but doesn't actually have any of these experiences, or doesn't even really believe them himself. It all just seems like an impression of an impression.
To top all that off, they have the famed television personality and commentator John Tesh as the newscaster that is in all the news broadcasts, is broadcasting up to this point. So they've really driven home this whole like TV is evil, and this is now we've met the spirit of television that says sure thing buddy to the most horrific serial killer we've met ever, the super serial killer. So yeah, it is too big of a message to be shoehorning into a story about a guy that can also intrinsically just jump around in people's dreams or have people jump into his dreams. And we've even experimented with this where our footballer friend, who is, yeah, like Chris had made the note while we were watching it, like, wow, everyone in this town could really run very fast. They're all like they're in the Matrix. He has the power to jump into Pinker's dreams. And we've seen this experimented with, very similar to the experimentation that they do in things like Dreamscape and, of course, the Freddy Krueger films and Nightmare on Elm Street. They're experimenting with like, okay, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to grab him and you just wake me up. They do that exact same gag here. I think it's almost a little more effective here because I think it's a very interesting ploy that they do, and it's a more interesting thing than going to Freddy Krueger's sing-song house. But it's still fairly serious up until the point of the execution itself, which isn't as fun as the execution in House 3, I will say. That's a little more bombastic, but we're already in crazy land territory in that with a very, very crazy killer. Here we are with a dead serious black magic killer and having the same sort of reaction. One thing that I think is interesting, and I wanted your opinion on this, not that we've experienced a lot of executions or witnessed them ever in our lives, but do you know if it's true that there is a two-way glass, like that the person getting executed can see all the people witnessing the execution? I would assume that it's a one-way glass, but is it true that they're just surrounded by people staring at them getting killed?
I think that it might depend on the prison, but from my understanding, both is true. That sometimes they can see you and sometimes they can't. Sometimes you're looking at it on a closed circuit television I think that's particularly true for things like lethal injection or something like that. But I'm really not sure. One of the things that I think that this execution misses is how drawn out it is, but how just frantic and disjointed it seems. You have Horace who wants to drop a bomb, that perhaps this connection between Jonathan and him is more than just supernatural.
Oh, and really handy if you already thought this story wasn't all over the place already.
Because just twist the knife a little bit further, it turns out that Horace is in fact Jonathan Parker's biological father. And he tells him in the most convoluted, like, to the point in which Horace is going to say it without saying that I'm your father, get interrupted, and then just tell the story again like he lost his place and had to start over from the beginning. Because he's going to deliver the lines twice in the exact same way, and it just loses all fucking momentum. It is so cringy and bad. And this is where the first time where I was looking at Mitch Pileggi and just thinking like, where are you, Wes? Mm-hmm. Like, you got to help him out here, man. Like, he's delivering his lines and you could save this with editing, like, or make it more direct. At the very least with the horror show, even though they basically rip off a fucking line from Hellraiser, at least it's a good line, and at least it's to give you a sense of like, okay, this isn't over. This isn't like a long paragraph of dialogue, very clumsily delivered. I don't care about this. This aspect of the film is baffling to me. Why does he also need to be your dad? It absolutely like adds nothing to it.
Especially when we have been led to believe at this point that it was his bump on the head, his near concussion in football, getting slammed in football, that gave him the head injury where he briefly forgot his girlfriend and her name and stuff. We thought that might have been why he could suddenly jump dreams. That's what I understood. So now the football injury has nothing to do with it?
We'll never go back to it. Like, they will never, like, it will never become relevant again. Mm-hmm. That no one will deliver any dialogue about it. Like, all we need to know is that they are connected. This is his biological father. He is going to melt like he's made of beeswax. And then I guess we're out of here, except they waste no fucking time. Because, man, Horace just starts jumping bodies and killing people immediately.
And this is where there's a tonal shift here that I really love, followed by one I cannot stand. And it all happens in this like weirdly poorly written execution scene, basically. The execution itself is interesting, as executions are. And they get a lot of stuff right as far as the tone and the look of it. Not what people are saying or doing. But then the execution goes awry, and there is smoke everywhere and flashing lights everywhere. A lot of people are dead, and the son and his detective dad are like up in arms and trying to figure out what happened and trying to see who's all alive in the mayhem. And it's dark. It's handheld camera, which they use a couple times really badly in this film, but here it's done well. And it goes into almost like the most tense moment in a procedural here. And I really like the procedural up until this point. It's all done really, really well. And it's filmed fairly well, except for some bad shaky cam. But this thing with the strobing, the strobing blown lights, the lack of real electricity, the electricity in the air that is running errant, the smoke that's filling the air, the shadows, it almost becomes very like monotone and low saturation. The filmmaking is really good here, except for the story itself is like makes no sense by this point at all. And then they pull this dolly zoom where Jonathan realizes that Pinker is still alive, jumping bodies. And it's this realization that it really is his dad. And he's jumping bodies and he's still out there and he's going to come and kill everyone around him. That's where like there's this high watermark where the film suddenly goes into complete bozo land territory. And we're done with any good filmmaking, good lighting, good cinematography, good writing. All that's done. As soon as they pull this dolly zoom, this through the looking glass moment, it just all goes to shit. So if you weren't having a good time with this film by this point, you're about to have a real bad time.
We have this moment in which the on-site doctor is going to go check on him. He is just coursing with electricity. She gets electrocuted. What we learn and what the officers who are escorting this seemingly unconscious woman away learn is that she is now being possessed by Horace. They're going to die in a fiery crash as this ambulance is destroyed. But don't worry, one of the officers is going to be thrown from the vehicle. But guess what? Horace is now inhabiting that person. And then we have this movie where, oh, okay, so Horace was a serial killer who died because he was a crazy mass murderer and he killed Parker's family. This doesn't seem to be relevant anymore because it all got erased because Allison was killed. And now they've executed him, but he's now... Okay, so this is the movie. The movie is Horace is able to jump bodies and is going to use that to torment Don Parker? No, his son. Why is it that Jonathan Parker is the focus of Horace? Is it just because he's his son and we needed to add that? Because now Don Parker is such a fucking throwaway background character at this point. Mm-hmm. Why did we have to kill his family in the first reel? I don't and not give him any wiggle room to react to anything. I don't understand. And if you think that's not weird enough, you have body hopping. Guess who's back? Allison as a ghost.
Which I can't stand. I cannot stand her inclusion after her death.
Listen, I agree with you 100%. Not only is there no parameters for what the hell this ghost can do. At one point, she has gang. This is not hyperbole. She has a literal Care Bear stare in this fucking...
She does, and I wrote that in my notes. Care Bear stare. What the fuck? That's what my note says. A Care Bear stare.
There is so many moments coming up in this film where you are just going to be like, what is happening? Like, this movie is not giving me a chance to watch it. It is fucking going all over the place. And nothing could be, you think that this movie is about a body hopping ghost of a serial killer? No, that's going to be 20 minutes of the movie, and it's going to be all isolated basically into one scene. It's all going to take place during this park in broad daylight, and they're going to be jumping bodies all over the place until it eventually ends up. I mean, listen, it's funny. It's funny to see like a little girl cussing and trying to run him over with equipment. It's funny to have Jonathan. It's funny to have Jonathan running away from a cop and then chasing a little girl while she's screeching for her life. And then the little girl's mother showing up, and then the little girl's mother getting possessed while they're all screeching and yelling at each other and running this way and that way. And then a massive construction worker shows up and then hurls his pickaxe a fucking length of a football field into a river because, gang, if you didn't know this, Allison's necklace that she got for her birthday is their love, and that love is the only thing that can repel Horace and forcibly remove him from the bodies. But don't you worry, if that's too complex, a secondary way that he can leave the body is drain them of life. So you didn't know this, but being in the bodies drains the life force of the original body like a battery. And if that battery goes to zero, the host, dies as an empty husk. Now, how do we know all of this? Jonathan's going to tell us. How does Jonathan know this? Who the fuck cares?
I guess the only reason that Jonathan is involved. Oh no, the 3 reasons Jonathan's involved is only because his father was the detective who was targeted by Pinker. And of course, he's also Pinker's son. And he also got an injury that allows him to share mind space with this killer. One of those would have worked. Just one of those, not all 3 of them. Super annoying. And the fact that he's suddenly a psychic. He's a medium. Because no, I don't think everyone can see her ghost. I really don't. So yeah, I think it's him and Pinker that can see her ghost.
So the reason why they hurl that pickaxe into the water is because this is wild. And in a weird way, I respect it. I respect how not easy this was. But also, I think it's absolutely outrageous that they couldn't think of another way to fucking do this. But they pitched that axe with the necklace into the water. That is going to be a recurring problem in this film, trying to find this fucking necklace.
Which he could have just jumped out there, which is what I thought he was going to do, is go swim out there and get it. But no, it's not that easy.
No, what he's going to do, Lydia, is the much smarter thing. Walk into the river in the middle of the night in the pitch black darkness and then get frustrated. Well, you described the scene better than I did.
I love this scene because it seems like he's at his wit's end. He doesn't know what to do. I don't think the script knows what he's doing either. So he walks around this park ranting about what they're going to do, walks halfway into the lake, soaking his pants up to his crotch, ranting about how they're never going to find this thing. And his friend is offering to help him look for it. And he says, "You can't see in the dark without a mask. No one can." And it's the "no one can" that I'm like, did you ad-lib that by accident in the heat of the moment? Or is the script really that bad? Is it really that bad? And then he's done. He doesn't even attempt to root around in the lake in the dark. And he had said previously he knows pretty much where the pickaxe landed, which is retarded, which is ridiculous, which makes no sense because that chain could have flung off the pickaxe as it's flying through the air, but whatever. I'm not a scientist. But he stomps back on shore and he tells his friend, "At my house, I have a diving mask in the closet on the floor. Go get it." I don't know what he's planning on doing in the meantime, but he's sending his friend to go and get it. And I'm thinking, no, there isn't. There shouldn't be. You're moving. Because when your girlfriend was murdered in your bathroom, I guess you decided to move. Well, I don't think we have any lines that describe to us why he's moving or where he's moving or when he's moving. But he's packed everything up. We've had those scenes of him, with the tape gun, taping up great big boxes. We know that there's drop cloths over everything in his house. The only thing that actually is there still and plugged in is his massage chair, which he has some weird fixation with. There should be nothing.
In it so many times.
He does. For all of 4 seconds, he sits down, turns it on, and then has to go. But there shouldn't be a diving mask in his house on the floor in the closet. There should be nothing in the closet. He's moving. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. And this scene really drove home to me that I don't think this script made it past the first draft and it was put into production.
Maybe it was just they wanted to get it out the door. Maybe they knew that other super serial killer movies were coming out and they wanted to make sure that they didn't seem like the also ran, even though they were the people that released it last. It's hard to say, honestly. And gang, listen, I know we're kidding this movie pretty hard, but I can't pretend that these problems aren't here. I will be so lenient towards so much if there's some kind of intention that I'm getting from this film that isn't an all sincere. And maybe I'm bringing a lot of personal baggage in it because I know Wes Craven's direction in horror seemed to be, from my humble opinion, a person who had absolute contempt for the genre that he found himself stuck in because no one wanted to see any movie he did unless it was horror. Up to and including his refusal to ever refer to himself as a horror director. He's like, I'm a filmmaker. I'm like, Wesley, no one wants to watch any movie that's not a horror movie from you. You're a horror director. I'm sorry. So maybe that has something to do with it. But all of this just seems parodic and badly written, and I don't get it. And I'm trying so hard to find something about this that I think works or is really cool, but it just seems to fail on every conceivable level to me. I don't say that lightly. I really don't. We're still in the midst of a body hopping movie, by the way. And his coach, Ted Raimi, Pac-Man, they're going to fall victim to this possession. And again, he's just standing there telling people to fight it, but there's no parameters to how you fight this. Like it seems some people can push back with will for a time, but not at the same time. It all culminates into more bodies. Allison continuously showing up. They're concocting plans, and Jonathan has enlisted the help of his remaining football friends, led by his friend Rhino, the most competent friend, best buddy in a movie you could possibly have, because he's like, again, also super athletic. He's going to charge a police officer because guess what? The next person to get possessed is Lieutenant Don Parker himself, Jonathan's father. And now, double dad. He's got two dads.
Double dad. I never thought of it as double dad.
He's double
Oh
dad.
my God.
Wes Craven's father died very
dad.
young, and he never really met him. So now he's got two dads.
Dad. He starts calling him daddy at this point too, which is a bit of a shift, because before he seemed to refer to him, they were almost on a first name basis, and then dad, and then daddy, and it's just a very weird thing for him to be going through. But I really like Rhino quite a bit. I don't understand why all the footballers have matching black trench coats and know so much about the city's electrical grid.
And also, like, completely have his back immediately. He is trying to say that Horace Pinker is a body-swapping electricity ghost. Don't worry, the ghost of my dead girlfriend told me about it. And they're like, so what do we do? How do we help you? Like, immediately.
Yeah. It is very much a Dreamland Matrix mashup. All the while, you still have reputable news agents telling you what's really going on in the city on the television in the background. It's very, 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 very disjointed. And I like that you refer to him as an electricity ghost. I never really took the time to think about how to, what the taxonomy is of Horace Pinker. I just didn't care. I stopped caring when they pulled that dolly zoom. That's when this movie goes, up until the beginning, and I think this is what we remember when we think about this movie through the rose-tinted glasses of our youth in the video store. When we first saw it, we loved the beginning, and maybe we had one too many slices of pizza and had a nap for the end, or all those pixie sticks finally took hold and my mind wasn't with me for the last half of this film. The beginning, even with its black magic electricity ghost, it makes sense and it works and it's interesting and it's believable-ish enough, even living in this dreamlike Matrix town with a electricity ghost. but this ending, and we're not even done. We're not even there yet.
But you'd think we were, because here's the second, third act climax in this fucking movie. You have Parker and Jonathan climbing up a radio tower, and like you're watching them like arguing with each other and fighting and climbing, and you get the sense like, okay, we're getting out of here, because how many times have we seen a movie end at this exact moment? Someone's gonna fall, or they're gonna like defeat the ghost somehow. Don't you worry, don't you fret, we're getting out of here. But we're not getting out of here, because Don is going to will himself free. And also, like, I don't understand how any of this is supposed to work. Why is his father able to get rid of his double dad situation and no one else was able to do it? If you're trying...
Because he tricked him. He tricked Pinker. And that's, if anyone else would have thought hard enough for a moment to trick Pinker, maybe they would have got it. If that little girl would have been like, I have the diarrheas or something, and Pinker would have been like, oh, I don't want part of that. Little kid diarrhea is the worst, and jumped out of her body maybe. But he tricked him by saying, oh, my bum ticker, because every cop has a bum ticker. Mm-hmm. And his son being like, I didn't know you had a bum ticker, Dad. And Dad saying, well, I don't, but Pinker didn't know that either.
He says it in the most drawn out dialogue too. He's like, you know that, and I know that. I'm like, oh my God, dude. Okay. It's like pick up the pace. Yeah. Say your lines faster. They're bad. Just go for it.
It's already that long of a movie. They could speed it up a little bit.
And that's what I'm talking about. Because guess what? After the first movie was over and the body hopping movie was over, we got ourselves another movie. It's a trilogy in one. Maybe
it is a trilogy in one.
It's now we are in this stage in which we need to get this plan going. What's the plan? I don't know. Jonathan's got it cooked. Why? What the fuck is this? Who is this kid? He's like, they have a throwaway line that he's a straight A student. So I'm like, but it's not that I don't think that you can have some strategy, young footballer. It's more that I don't understand how can you, through observation alone, because what you're experiencing, I have to believe is unprecedented, you are able to establish the rules of this electricity ghost when the rules are constantly changing. There's no way, shape, or form that you should know that any of this works, because he is going to tell Rhino and his friends, who all of a sudden become like the fucking Three Stooges, like crowbar, crowbar, face mask, face mask. I'm like, come on, man, this sucks. And he's like, just be here at midnight. Turn off the power grid at midnight. And then he tells a broadcaster, be here 5 minutes till midnight. And the broadcaster does, because he says, well, if you don't do it, I'll just get all the other major news networks are going to be here. And he's like, oh. And so, did you notice how many characters were like, something tells me he knows what he's talking about, or I got a hunch this is real. I was like, fuck.
No, it is very annoying. And they don't even use John Tesh either, the television commentator, news broadcaster we've seen over and over in this. They pull in this guy who I thought was Jerry Seinfeld, kind of like just random newscasting looking guy. And yeah, this is his ticket to the big leagues, Wes. Listening to what this random kid says. And so, okay, he is the son of a celebrated detective, whatever. He was in the news for thwarting a murder. Okay, they sort of know who he is. They can't believe this. And to believe something as big as come to my house and set up a news crew and just wait for my signal or something like that.
Yeah.
That no news agent would swallow that.
I'll tell you what he is going to swallow. His ghost girlfriend's fucking tongue while he grabs her ass. I was looking at this. I was like looking at this scene, And I was just like, I can't believe he's like grabbing a ghost's ass like that.
They were virgins too. They throw a line out at the beginning that they had never had sex.
He's going for it now in the afterlife. He goes back to the river, and you couldn't see this at night. No one can. Is he going to come back with a mask? No. Is he going to come back in the daytime? No. Is he going to even take his fucking shoes off? No. He is going to do the first thing that he tried to do and gave up midway through after, I guess, he realized how stupid it was, and he told Rhino that it was impossible, and he is going to just go ahead and do this on his own multiple times. And gang, like, you so much wasted time.
There's a rule of 3 with something like this. You dive under, you don't get it. You dive under, a crab's on your nose, and you shake it off, and then you dive under, and then you come up with the necklace. Not 7 times.
Was it 7? Like,
I believe it was 7 times. So I started counting and then I gave up. I know it was more than 5.
It's so boring. Like, I'm sorry, like, cut some of this shit out, dude. You could have done anything. If Allison is going to effectively give him the fucking necklace anyways, because he can't find it, then just have her do it. Fine. You like metaphors and you like imagery. She's the lady in the lake, and this is his Excalibur. I'm totally fine with something that ridiculous in a movie that's already stretched the line of credulity to me to the breaking point. But to have him dive and dive and dive and dive in a movie that's almost 2 hours fucking long, like I can't. And then he gets so distracted playing grab ass with his ghost girlfriend that the other ghouls get mad that he's wasting time. And all of the people, it's like that scene in Lovely Bones. It's like all the people that got murdered show up and basically say like, okay, so stop making out with your ghost girlfriend, and could you go and get revenge, please?
Get a move on, kid. It is a neat looking scene for all of a second. It's only the second neat looking scene in this film.
What do you want to say about this plan of his, Lydia?
Oh my God. It's a miracle that it worked, but I'm not sure that it worked at all.
Man, listen, gang, I'm not the type of person. I want to take a pause here. I hate being this guy. Okay. I hate being Mr. Yuck. This movie is a piece of shit. And had I known if I had remembered how bad this fucking movie was, I probably would have suggested we did something else. But because I don't like being this fucking like angry video game nerd, like persona, I don't like it. It's not me. It's not cool. I'm sure everyone here was trying.
I'm glad that you said that. Had we recalled how wretched this film was, we may have not done it for the show. And the only answer I would have for that is that it is helpful for anyone that would recommend that we do this movie. Mm-hmm. Maybe they don't remember it either. And now we can point to this and say, well, we did. And it was terrible. Careful what you wish for.
Well, this is why I never wanted to do it's like I flirt with the idea of doing Scream. And then I'm just like, I'm just going to fucking...
Yeah.
Like, it'll be 10 times worse because I'm, like, offended by that movie, where this is just bad. But, like, I think the interesting trajectory of Wes Craven's creative process, where he seemed to almost try to make films that were interesting to him, that dabbled in the horror genre, and then... I really think Nightmare on Elm Street broke his fucking brain. Like, I really think that he really fucking hated the direction, like losing control of his baby. I don't think that ever really happened to him before in that capacity, where like you keep making sequels and you hate them and you make no bones about hating them. And then you go into this, your resentment turns into, well, I'm just going to make another Freddy Krueger movie, because the intention was Shocker is going to be the new thing. Horace Pinker is going to be like our new fucking slasher for everybody to get on board with, because like the death is so ambiguous that he could definitely come back in a sequel, but the movie bombed, so why the hell would they ever make a sequel? And then what's he do? Wes Craven's New Nightmare. He goes back, and everyone talks about like, oh, his meta commentary. This was first, and it's just as meta. It may not be as blatant about like, hey, we're watching a movie, wink wink, as Wes Craven's New Nightmare. And then once he does that, he jumps on board Kevin Williamson's script for Scream. And then he's just like, I don't make horror movies anymore. I now make a franchise that makes fun of the genre that broke my brain and forced me shackled to remain in it when I want to do fucking anything else. But no one wants me to do anything else. I can't get money for anything that's not a horror movie. I don't get offered fucking movies that are not horror.
It's his own fault for doing good at the beginning of his career. You know, I didn't hear Toby Hooper complain.
Like in a weird way, like I kind of feel bad for like the late stages of some of these guys' careers. But at the same time, it's like, you know, you never saw George Romero complaining about his fucking shit.
Cronenberg complain.
Cronenberg didn't complain. Even when the movies turn out bad, John Carpenter is like just so aloof. Yeah. He's just like, I'm at home playing video games, and I just keep getting checks.
I mean, my son are gonna make another album. That's what we're doing right now. We're not paying attention to the failure or success of this film.
Yeah, I just wonder, like, he just seemed so offended by horror. Like, he really did. And I am bringing a lot from that, like, Never Sleep Again documentary where, man, did he trash all those fucking movies. And like, I'm sorry, Wes Craven, like, not all of the Nightmare on Elm Street sequels are bad. Like, they're not. And they're fun, and people liked them. And I get that, like, he just talked like he was so above it. Like, he was so above it, where he was like, I couldn't make sense of any of it. I had to, and how he's always like, the big hero, Wes Craven, is going to come back and save this stupid franchise from itself. And he makes Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which is not, it's not good. Like,
no.
Like,
do you think he made it because people are like, oh, you got one more in you, come on, you gotta make something like that again? And he said, yeah, you want to see me fucking here's this bullshit. This is what I think of you and your dream ghost killer bullcrap.
Yeah, like,
this is how ridiculous it is.
And I wonder if he was like, that's too subtle. People didn't get it. And then they made Wes Craven's New Nightmare, and then he still felt that was too subtle. And so that's where Scream comes in. And I understand that he didn't write that, but like, his touch is all over that fucking movie. Like, even if Kevin Williamson didn't direct the film, even if he didn't write the script, it was Kevin Williamson, his directing, like, especially now when I was watching Shocker, I was like, these teenagers talk like they're in Scream. Like, they really do. It's that heightened cartoonish reality, which in a weird way, it completely contextualizes the worst scenes in Scream, like the video store scene and the murder scene at the party. All of these awfully written, no one acts like this. Why did you make Matthew Lillard behave this way? Like, he's so much better than this. This is the worst. Like, this is why. It's anyway.
I'm sorry. We got a rant episode. Oh no.
It's okay. Like,
yeah.
I feel, I don't think we said anything unfair.
No, we didn't. No, we certainly didn't. I mean, anyone who's watched this movie would, even people who like it or claim to, would probably be like, yeah, that's very true. Maybe that's why they like it, because it's outlandish or whatever, or they feel it's safe to, aside from Ted Raimi's death, it's safe to watch with kids.
The coach, like, killing himself, it was a bit much for a young kid maybe, but like, fuck, they're punching each other, and I swear to God, it's Looney Tunes. Like, the punches have no fucking effect. Like, imagine getting punched 40 times in the face and you're just like, you can still spit out one-liners and your lips aren't even bleeding. Like, like aside from the burns on his head from being like an electrocuted ghost, Pinker wouldn't even be injured. Like there wouldn't be any visible, like, and I'm sorry, he still has a limp as a ghost? How fucking unfair is that? Like,
I love it. That's so horrible. No, you're right. We are fair, and it's not necessarily a slam episode because we didn't watch it to do that.
No, I watched it because I was like, I remember this, and this should be fun, and you know what I would love, and there's a part of me that's like I bought the DVD for this because it was like fucking $9, so I was like, oh, I'll just get the DVD. So I have it, but there's no special features on it because it's like a midnight collection, like very bare bones thing. Mm-hmm. I wish that I somehow just had something with the director's commentary or some sort of commentary. Mm-hmm. I need to hear somebody who likes this movie tell me why they think this is good or fun, or because I don't even think it's fun. Yeah. It's just obnoxious and bad. And like for fuck's sake, I'll watch a movie that's bad. It's like,
yeah, or absurd. I mean, Society's a film that is absurd, and and so is Reanimator and stuff like that. So those are absurd films. But yeah. Anyhow,
we had a serial killer movie with a bloodthirsty killer. And then we had a climax of that scene with a rooftop fight. We're out of here. That movie's done. You don't need to make sequels if all of your trilogy is in one movie. Then we have the second movie in this fucking film, which is the body swapping electricity ghost movie. And so there you have it. We have a body swapping. It ends with a climactic battle between, and there's another layer to this. Foster child, biological child. They flirt with nature versus nurture. They flirt with who do you come from and who raised you. Dad versus father. Double dad. So that movie's over now. Now we're not doing the body swapping, like body jumping thing anymore. Now we are strictly a ghost that moves through television and can be controlled by a remote control.
Yeah, and remote controls that do not work that way until at least conservatively 2005. So we have a bit of a way to go before you can be moving it around like a motion sensor. But yeah, it is very Max Headroom to Electric Boogaloo. Very, I guess, okay, you were playing with the technology that you had. This is something for a short film. This is something for experimentation. This is something for a grand finale of a different film. Not these other 4 films that you've broken down quite neatly, because that's exactly what we've experienced. This is the 4th one. This is beyond the 2nd one of Electric Boogaloo, but this is really, really weird and really, really bad. And the only thing that ties it into this movie, aside from the fact that Pinker is an electricity ghost of some sort, is that beginning scene when they're in Pinker's lair and you see those reels running on all of his televisions about all these horrible things going on television. They're about to jump through all of those things, which is absolutely absurd. The whole thing is absurd and cartoonish, and not in a good way, because you can have absurd and cartoonish in a horror film, obviously, and have it be unsettling and cool. And this is neither of those things.
It doesn't even look good. Like it looks so obvious that you have 2 actors running through, like, just being projected over top of stock footage of various qualities. And also, thank God that Universal put this out, because they have access to like the Universal monsters and all that kind of shit. But what Jonathan's plan is, and I will do my best to summarize what the plan is. He is going to have a television camera set up in the bedroom where the murders of his family occurred. Not only is Horace double dad, he's double family killer. He killed your foster family, he killed your original family. They're going to point the camera in this place, while simultaneously having the necklace that he can use to stun and disorient and all that kind of shit. And I guess prevent Horace from possessing bodies. Like, maybe that's the idea. But he is going to get Horace to jump into the television screen itself. Jonathan is going to also go into the television screen. How does Jonathan do this? He's just going to ask his girlfriend to give him the power to do it. So Allison, his girlfriend ghost, also can just grant him magical powers. And so he jumps into the television. Now, they battle throughout the TV. It reminded me a lot of the John Ritter comedy Stay Tuned. I cannot remember if Stay Tuned came out before or after this. It doesn't really matter, because if you were to ask Wes Craven, he'd be like, I would never watch a movie like that, so I don't know what you're talking about. That's almost exactly what I'm sure he would have said. I'm sorry, he seemed like a nice man. I'm sorry he's dead. But this happens, and they go through all of this, and they jump into realities. Like, you're on television, and if you're in television, then you're in the movie. If you're in Frankenstein, you're in Frankenstein, and all the characters can interact with you, or at least that's what they imply. Mile the While, like a metal song is playing in the background while it's like this huge montage, and
not even a good metal song. Like, it's not like, they have the No More Mr. Nice Guy covered by Megadeth.
Yeah.
And the electrocution scene is not even a quarter that good, and that's an Alice Cooper song covered by Megadeth. So this is sort of reminiscent of the Forrest Gump footage where they doctor him into all sorts of historical things. Yeah, and it's not nice, fun historical things either. And it's not even half as well done, because there are, looking at it through 2024 eyes, watching Forrest Gump, which was on the television when I was at DreadCon last weekend. So I did watch a snippet of Forrest Gump recently. And, they did it with him being in all of these pivotal things and having like machinations through American history that actually made a difference through his bumbling, warm-hearted nature or whatever. Watching it now, you can see, of course, how poorly it was done in some scenes. But in some scenes, it looks really good and it's really believable. None of this is believable. It's all ridiculous, and they toss out one-liners. There's a few one-liners near this end that just are the most ridiculous. Take a ride in my Volkswagen and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely terrible. Oh yeah, it's so terrible. And they're running through things you couldn't live through, like the Bikini Atoll nuclear bomb testing and Hiroshima and just terrible, horrible things. And they should be carpet bombed and not living through.
I just wanted to take a brief pause, just talking about like the terrible fucking puns. There's so much about this weird recliner chair, and then and Horace possesses the chair, and then you literally have a scene in which the actor Mitch Pileggi, like partially dressed as a chair, giving him a bear hug from behind. And I'm like, what? What the fuck are we watching?
It looked like Cherry from Pee-wee's Playhouse.
I thought the same thing. I was like, oh my God, Cherry's come to kill. Just like I always feared. When you are in a movie, you're in the movie. When you go to a news broadcast, for example, you're actually physically there. You can go into people's homes. They literally have a scene where like, and again, these guys are just punching the shit out of each other. But it's like, there's no effect whatsoever. You could punch each other in the head 50 fucking times. It doesn't matter. But eventually, by somehow grabbing a remote control, like, this is what's so fucking stupid about this. So Jonathan went into this without a remote control, and then he grabbed a remote control from another family's home, and then he was using it like, this was my plan all along. What are you talking about?
And who was changing channels? Channels aren't like connected through some series of tubes or something or wires. Like, you can't jump channels like that. Like, who was changing channels and how? It's just made absolutely no sense.
It culminates into finally them getting spit out into the room in which he conned that newscaster by promising that he was going to deliver the copycat Horace Pinker killer to this very room. They show up and he has the remote control. And now Jonathan can control Horace Pinker with this remote control. He can pause them, rewind them, throw them all over the room. And in a cartoonishly dorky ass fucking scene that evokes no emotion whatsoever, except you're watching like Daffy Duck, he says, "This is something that you've never experienced before, being victimized." Like, he tries to do this hard line thing where you literally like have Horace Pinker jumping up and down on a bed and then pausing him with like this ridiculous expression. And like, not only is Mitch Pileggi not acting like any of this really makes him anything other than mad. Again, he's just mad. He doesn't feel victimized. He doesn't look victimized. Nothing looks like arduous torture. And that's when I'm like, at the beginning of the movie, you have a real sense that there's something going on. And then by the end of the movie, we are out of the realm of horror and we are in just slapstick comedy. I'm watching Airplane and not a clever Airplane.
I think that remote controls of the time too, especially that one with the hard keys that you had to like click down really hard the way that you do with this one, works on ultrasonic tones. There's a small tone that the receiver is picking up to change the channels. I think it's that old of a remote control that it doesn't even rely on electricity or infrared. So it might have been a newer infrared one if we saw like the little flashing light at the end when he was using this. So it doesn't explain to me even at a scientific level how this would be controlling Pinker, because it is an old remote control, an extremely old one that I think works on sound waves, which up until this point Pinker hasn't infiltrated.
The goal, ladies and gentlemen, is to cut the power while Horace is not in the TV or in the TV, or I don't know.
I'm not sure either, because they say that it's too late, and I'm like, well, it seems to be working just fine. Whether the power's on or off, you're still kind of trapped.
When the idea is that he was going to oblivion, I suppose. But, oh, guess what? Jonathan's watch was 3 minutes off, but it doesn't matter because who cares? It's like to create false tension. At no point do I think Jonathan's not going to make it. He puts the necklace on the video camera and he jumps through it and he ends up where he's supposed to be, and Horace ends up in a blacked out neighborhood in a burning TV, and he's still screeching and yelling and saying that he was going to get him. And then in a place that apparently has no power, in a TV that is blown up and on fire, Jonathan uses the remote to turn off the TV in a place that has no power, and the fire turns out.
Whole thing's super ridiculous. And that Pinker's in the TV still going like, no, you'll never stop me.
And then he turned, like, again, like, the TV should just be off. He should just be gone. Why are you... Why did you have Rhino cut the power to the entire neighborhood and then you still needed to turn off the TV?
And the power seems to be what's fueling the fire, which is not how fire works.
It's embarrassing. It's absolutely embarrassing. Like, come the fuck on. Come the fuck on. But then we're out of here. Like, they look at the stars. He can talk to Allison in his head, so I mean, that's weird. I hope they can have ghost sex later.
At this rate, as far as electricity, ghost, person jumping, maniac, super serial killers that come back from being electrocuted and terrorize people, would you say that this is the better film, or that House 3 is the better film? Or is there another film out there that I've not heard of that has the same premise of a super serial killer coming back from being electrocuted and seeking revenge?
There were other films that were released in this genre. There's other films that were released after this. Shocker has the most iconic poster art of any of them. And I would say through poster art and Wes Craven's name alone, this is easily the most famous one. I will tell you this, that if I was going to just one-to-one compare it to House 3, the horror show that we just watched, House 3, the horror show is a better written movie. Shocker is a better production. But Shocker's the fact that you had, this sounds shitty, and no offense to Sean Cunningham, who I'm sure is a nice guy, and who's still alive. Shocker was made by people who should know better and should do better and should know when they're not doing better. And it's just, I'm so glad that I never on a whim like bought any of the super expensive like collector's editions of this movie. I would be so bummed out.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that people looking to this film, even at the time to a certain degree, would have looked to the name of Wes Craven and expected so much more and come away sorely disappointed. I don't know why that memory doesn't stick. Or do people enjoy this sort of camp, this level of camp, this level of ineptitude, this bonkers gonzo story that makes no sense? Is that what they're going to when they say that this is a good movie or a classic, or they like it, or, you know, recommend it? I could never recommend this to somebody.
Me either. Particularly, if this movie was like 80 something minutes, I would be like, you're in and out. It's not that big of a deal. But almost 2 hours of this fucking shit, like, I can't, I couldn't possibly in good conscience recommend this film to anybody. And I'm sorry to say that, like I said, I tend to just not want to ever really do films that I don't like, because I don't want to make a hit piece episode of the show. But you know what? We didn't remember it. I remembered the poster art. I remembered the poster art so vividly, and it seemed so ubiquitous that I was like, well, there's a reason why people are still talking about this movie. Maybe people, like, nostalgia is a hell of a drug. Like, or is it just because the iconography, or is it just because we live in a world where we as horror fans wallow in a collector's market where you simply must have everything, we're like, everything has to be a hidden gem, everything has to be a long forgotten film, and do people elevate this because when it comes to Wes Craven, the man has made some of the most famous horror movies that have ever been made. So is that why, if you want to talk about Wes Craven, like on his, death anniversary or his birthday or an anniversary of like one of his movies coming out, do you want to be that person that's just like, hey, Nightmare on Elm Street, everyone likes that one. Hey, The Hills Have Eyes. Hey, Last House on the Left. Or do you want to be like, here's a film that not many people talk about. I make my business on TikTok talking about fucking horror movies that people don't talk about, that have fell into complete obscurity. But I put my fucking integrity on the line for that, because I do not do videos about films that I don't think are worth your time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it's very, very true. I really enjoy your TikTok content, by the by. I will say, yeah, no problem. Everyone should go and check out The Horror Historian.
Yeah, I rebranded because I was like, you know what? I'm sick and tired of people not knowing things that they should know.
I think that this suffers a lot from the nostalgia and the cool art and people wanting to be part of some sort of cool horror club where they've helped dig up these gems. I find this happens with books sometimes. On one hand, you have so many people that talk about Pet Sematary, but I bet you they've all read it 4 times and it is good. But then they have a lot of people who talk about House of Leaves. And they talk about it and they recommend it for the cred of being able to talk about it and recommend it. They didn't enjoy reading it, or they didn't ever finish it. And this could be the case with Shocker.
I try to tell people all the time when people ask me, what's your favorite horror movies? I tell people all the time, you're gonna be disappointed by my answer, because you're expecting me to pull a film out of my butt that you've never heard of. But I'm gonna say Friday the 13th. I'm gonna say Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I'm going to say Halloween. Like, there's a reason why over time these films float to the surface and remain there. It's not enough to be like, well, they made a lot of money at the time. Not always. And even though they do, there's tons of times where movies make tons of fucking money at the box office, and 20, 30, 40 years later, you've never heard of them. I promise you've never heard of them. So, like, it's just something to be said about, I really just think it's the iconography. That whoever designed that poster, the orange, the electricity, the lettering, it is perfectly done. And back in the day when your job as a designer, and you can speak to this as a designer, was to make sure that when people went to the video store aisle and they saw your cover, they stopped and they picked it up. Let's check this one out.
And to this day, I still would. I would still grab Shocker and be like, wow, man, yeah, I remember that. Even though I have now been educated and my memory is not all it's cracked up to be.
So what do we got next for him?
Coming up next, we have Hellfest. And, you know, this is a nice blend for me of like Halloween-y, haunt feels. And I'm about to read Clown in a Cornfield 3 Church of Friendo. So this has got some clowny good times, and I think that that's a really good blend of things.
Well, since you, a couple of years ago, introduced me to Haunt, which has become one of my favorite horror movies, really, particularly if we're talking about horror movies that take place on Halloween night. Oh my God.
It's so good.
I liked it so much I talked about it on the CBC, Lydia. That's how you know I really liked it. So I'm hoping, I hope it's not hard to find streaming.
Oh, I'll figure it out. I always do.
At least we tried to figure out the plot of fucking Shocker. That's really got our brains electrified.
Oh yeah, pun intended.
On that note, I'm Wes Snipe.
And I'm Typical Lydia.
And you've been listening to kind of a mean episode of Dead Air.
It was kind of mean. But, you know, warranted, because holy crap. What a ride.
If you like this show, you can find more episodes and other content on splatterpictures.net, Spotify, or wherever you download podcasts. We also upload all episodes to YouTube now, if you'd prefer to listen that way. You can find us across social media like Instagram, X, and TikTok, and the show is edited by Lydia Peaver and hosted by Lydia Peaver and me, Wes Knight. We'll see you next time.